All right, cool. Take two, I guess. So, Kev, what's up, man? How we doing?
Doing good, man, on this rainy day. It's crazy.
Yeah, man. I mean, let's really just get into it. Last week was player expectations, what that looks like in terms of how a player can manage their their career cycle from a youth player all the way up to high school, potentially college. And now we want to roll into skill development. The skills landscape, as we've talked about privately, has definitely been drastic through times. You see people with a lot of skill, no skill, how to really walk our audience into like how does one acquire skill, what do you see in skill development that's missing in terms of training or kids mindset. And I know I got a couple of other series of questions that I want to get your opinion on, but you could take the lead from here.
Yeah, the first thing I want to discuss is about skill development, and where we're at, in the United States as far as like the skill acquirement. I think we're at a crossroads. I think you have people that do it the right way of teaching kids, and then you have you have trainers that do it the wrong way. And I think now more than ever, there not that needs to be like one way of doing things, but there's a certain set of skills that everyone should have, I believe. And that comes down to what they're getting taught, what they're looking at online. Because now we live in a digital world where now people are looking at their phones to get, training advice. And now everyone, I'm not on social media a lot, but when I am on social media, it seems like a lot of guys have a lot of different opinion on the way they should be training, and it's everyone. To me, like you don't have to be a player to teach someone, right? But you do have to be knowledgeable about what you're teaching kids because nowadays a kid looks online and they think you know things about basketball that sometimes clearly that person doesn't know the ins and out and what's going to work in a game and what's not going to work in a game. So I think as far as like skill development, it's at a crossroads. Like if I'm a kid nowadays, what do I believe online is going to help me? Because there's so much stuff online that kids are looking at that I think it's confusing.
Yeah, like with many things, I believe the term is like information overload. You don't know where to go, who to listen to. There's so much information out there that you almost don't know where to start. Should I work on, combination moves? Should I work on finishing? How good should my handle be before I start practicing in game? Whatever, right? You see all these different things on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. But you mentioned earlier that you believe there's a good foundational core skills that you think players should have. What do you think those skills are? When do you think they should start building on those skills and really just talk about that dynamic?
Yeah, I think the basic fundamental skills that everyone should have is, your basic rip, left, right, your basic counter off of the rip, okay? Maybe fake to the left, go to the right, and vice versa. Fake to the right, go to the left. I think those are simple enough skills in which they still work at an elite level. And I think these kids are not getting taught that. These kids are not getting taught triple threat. So many kids are good with the ball, but if you take them outside of taking away their strength with this dribbling the ball and you say get it off of a triple threat, they don't know how to do it. First of all, they don't know their left from their right. All right. I know a lot of kids, especially some of the kids that I've trained in the past, like I gotta teach them basic footwork, how to move your defender where you want them so you can blow by them. Right. And that's about just basic footwork of moving your feet to where you want to beat your opponent. People don't know that because all you see online is dribble, dribble, dribble. And when you look at it on TV, when you look at it on TV, you see people doing simple moves. Take for instance, this week is going to be the Final Four. It's going to be Final Four for girls. It's going to be Final Four for men, right? You look at some of these games and you cannot tell me you don't see people doing simple things. You don't see people dribbling through their legs 1,000 times. You don't see it. Of course, the stars, okay, the stars are doing it, but that's one girl, that's one guy. So, what are the other players are doing? Because that's going to dictate on what you do as a player who wants to get at that level or want to be able to acquire some of the skills that they have. You're going to have to follow the same suit. If they're doing simple moves on TV, that's telling you Well, I need to do simple moves. I need to master simple moves. So some of the things that I would teach, especially younger kids and older kids who want to be at that level, is your triple threat, working out of a triple threat, how to get your defender off balance so you can beat them right away. Because at every level, quickness matters. The quickness of the move matters. You have an internal clock of 2 to 3 seconds that you have to make a move to get by the defender, or the defense, the people in back of the main defender who's guarding you, then they're going to readjust, and that shot that you would have if you blow by your defender, you're not going to have, because now you have a defense behind you that is going to contest your shot or negate you going to the basket.
It's definitely also worth mentioning that even when you watch these players warm up or train, a lot of it is very fundamental, right? Form shooting, footwork, whatever is within their arsenal at that certain position. I know privately you have a story that I don't know if you want to share. I mean, we could also cut this out if need be, but that when you were at U Miami, you were playing against Ray, yeah, Ray, was it Ray Allen, and playing against, training with, and then you saw the attention to detail and the simple things he was doing. I don't know if you want to share that story.
Yeah, when I was at the University of Miami, that was, I believe that was the lockout year of, I want to say 98, 99 was a lockout year. Don't hold me to that, but I think that was around that time. And a lot of NBA players, they flocked to Miami because the lockout, nice weather. So uh, during that season, in that preseason, my first year at Miami, we got to play against every superstar that was in the NBA. You know, Tim Hardaway, Alonzo, the whole, pretty much the whole Heat players. And then Glenn Robinson came down, Ray Allen came down, even Alex Rodriguez came down, who I, by the way, he could hoop. Alex Rodriguez can hoop. Listen, I know he's a great baseball player, but you talk about basketball player, like I didn't like, you look at him it's like, oh, this guy is just a baseball player. Nah, he can truly hoop. He can hit shots, he can dribble. His athleticism surprised me. But getting back to the story of Ray Allen, because they would come down there for the whole week. So we would play pretty much every day. We would work out and then play in the afternoon. So one day, I get to the gym pretty early pretty much every day, right? Just to work on my game. Because at that time, I still was a developing player, developing my shot, developing my ball handling. And every day I would see Ray before he beat everyone to the gym. And I had a chance to sit and watch. Like I would sit and like I wouldn't bother him because I know how people are. I'm sitting in the corner just watching him. Literally, he would just take form shooting. He did form shooting for an hour. He didn't go further out. He didn't, you would think he's a three-point king. He pulls up and he does all this great stuff. All he did was just work and work and work. So at the end of the week of watching this guy just shoot form shooting over and over again, I finally worked up enough courage to go ask him. And I said, "Hey Ray, why don't you shoot like threes? Why don't you shoot like pull-ups and stuff like that? The stuff that I'm accustomed to him doing." Because at that time, I believe he was on the Milwaukee Bucks,
Milwaukee, yeah, that was
right?
a different Ray.
Yeah, yeah, that was a different Ray right there. So I asked him that, and he said, "Listen, your form is the most important thing." He said, "My form will travel." He said, "If I perfect my form, I don't worry about whether I'm going to make shots at the three-point line or pulling up." He said, "The form is the most important thing. You got to work on your form so it becomes habit." And that stuck with me because here's a guy that you would think he takes 5,000 shots from the three-point line. No, here's a guy that worked on his form just from a couple feet from the basket. And all he would do is just go a little bit around the world, 1 feet away from the basket, shooting form shots over and over and over again. And if he didn't do that, he went to the free throw line, shooting over and over and over and over again free throws. So I kind of developed the same routine. Like after watching him play, um, my next year when I transferred to St. Bonaventure, I actually adapted that. Like all I did was form shooting, form, form, form. And it really, really helped my game because it really perfected the way I shot the ball. And it showed in that year that I played for St. Bonaventure, setting the all-time record for threes.
Something that's interesting, is the fact that someone can listen to that and be like, "Oh, form shooting is boring." For an hour, form shooting? I feel like there's something to be said about doing the simple things really well and doing them over and over and over again, regardless, basketball, whatever, or as what he said, it can travel, right? It translates into other aspects of your game or other aspects of your life in terms of because you have such a solid foundation. But for players, regardless, shooting, ball handling, where do players start when they're looking to advance their skills? Like I said earlier, there's so much information. There's information overload on everything. TikTok, this trainer, that trainer. How does one start in terms of finding that foundational, repetitious routine that they can get into?
Yeah, I always say start small. So I, with my own son, I implement like, hey, 5 minutes a day. And that's what I would tell kids. Start out with 5 minutes a day because you're not gonna do an hour, right? Your body and your mind, your mental game, you're not trained to do that yet. So start with 5 minutes a day and start with something simple as form shooting, right? Form shooting. I know Ray did it with a basket. You don't really need a basket. You just need space where you're working on flicking the ball and mimicking the same routine over and over and over again. And you may do that for 5 minutes. Then the next day, do it again. The goal is every day you should be doing 5 minutes of something, right? If you're working on ball handling, right? There's a certain thing that you're working on. A lot of people, there's an unwritten rule when you dribble a ball that you gotta have your hand over the ball. I know a lot of coaches in our area tell the girls and the boys like it's a carry, you can't get underneath the ball. But everyone who knows who dribbles a ball understands like you got to carry the ball, right? There's a specific way that you do it in which the referees don't see it, but everyone, if you look on TV, their hand is underneath the ball. So I would tell kids to start with something that's very simple, right? Because once you start with something simple and you master that, then you move on to another simple thing, right? You master another simple thing. It's what I call habit stacking, right? You stack habits, and the more habits that you stack, the better you're going to become. Okay, and you got to be disciplined in what you're doing. You got to know, like, okay, every day, if I put in a certain amount of work, then when I play, I'm going to be a product of that work that I put in.
I could be blank. I mean, I'm definitely blanking. What's the coach at UConn women's?
Gino Arama.
Gino. There was a good clip that I seen online, I think Twitter or something, where he mentioned like the skill level with the kids that he's evaluating is at an all-time high, right? He's like, oh man, they're skillful, the athleticism's off the charts, but he's saying despite the skills, they don't know how to play, right? They're just
Mm.
dribbling for no reason, right? You're going between legs 5 times, but you're in the same spot. And it was a nice little excerpt where, I think, the press, parents, I think were there. They're all just, they're quiet because, there's to some extent it's true, right? You see the NBA. Oh, granted, the NBA is a different story, right? You see a lot of players, they're just, oh, between the legs 9 times, behind the back, combo is like, how do you take what he said? What is your perception of almost I wouldn't necessarily say the over glorification of all these skills and all these moves, but I mean, actually, side note, even I know we share back and forth trainers where they're doing all kinds of crazy things like jumping through hoops. And I think you shared with me a guy who's on a treadmill or doing shoot, it's craziness. What what can you say about the level of I guess skill awareness, if you want to put a title to it, that players have to have in terms of this works, this doesn't work, there's a time and place to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, Gino's my all-time favorite. He's all my like every year in AAU, when I have really good teams, I show them video of him because I think he out of anyone in college, okay, really talks real. And what he says about skill development, what he says about kids, like I share the same value as he does. But obviously, he's on a different platform than I am because if he says it, people don't question, right? If I say it, people question like, "Oh, that's not how to be." So when he talks about like the skill levels at an all-time high, it is. It's no doubt about it. Like I have discussions with you about back in the 1950s whether these guys can hang with nowadays, and you always say no, but that's a different generation. But the skill level is at all-time high. They can do more with the ball. They can jump higher, run faster. Um, they can do anything with the ball better than my generation, right? And even the generations before. But I feel like the biggest difference is how to use it, when to use it. And that
Yeah,
is
they're
what
right-handed
we
bandits
see
back
a
then.
lot with at our level, at the AAU level, at the training level that we're in. We see that a lot, that people don't know how to use that. They use it at the wrong time. They don't understand time and place. They don't understand manipulation. The pace of your dribble matters, right? They don't understand any of that. All they understand is, if they're training, well, this video says do this, and this video said, oh, that looks cool, or I seen online this girl, that guy did it, and like, no, it's not played through a video, right? This is real life. So to me, you're gonna have to be able to look at what you're looking at, right? The content that you're looking at, and understand that who they're doing it against sometimes, because who they're doing it against online tells you, like, listen, that ain't working on an elite player. That may work on that person, because that person's defense is not up to par to an elite player, and they think they can do that on anyone. So when you're talking about Gino, talking about the skill level, yeah, the skill level is at an all-time high, but the IQ is not. The IQ is missing. And that's what we have to teach on our level, the IQ. Like, we did a practice yesterday, and it was all about IQ, when to do something. And it's hard for kids to understand that if they're not being trained on that. And the more they're trained on that, the more they understand of how to use it, when to use it. And I believe if kids are trained on that, they're smart enough to realize and smart enough to execute what you're telling them. But it's too much. It's too much online that they're watching, that I find that it's disheartening, because it's almost unraveling everything that I'm doing. Because what are they doing more, Peace? Are they on their phones a lot more watching this, or are they at our practices and our training sessions doing the things that we're trying to teach them, as far as, right time, right place, what type of dribble moves is going to work, when. So, it's a tough battle, but it's been done. We've been doing it for years now, helping, guys and girls understand that. And when it's done, okay, and when they do get it, it looks nice. You can tell it works in a game.
And I think with the perfect example of the LSU game, I also toss it up to players not really knowing what to look for, right? We were watching the LSU game and people are so enamored, and talking to some of the kids yesterday, they're so enamored with Kalen Clark's, 40 points and 12. But it's like, when we were going back and forth, it was more so like, dang, like look at the defense. Like, how does one walk into a game, right, and do the same thing over and over? Like, who's guarding who? What is the set? What are you offering her? What are you cutting off? Like, I feel like a lot of players and coaches also, they're too honed in on, oh, look at this three. Look, it's like, or more so, it's like there's not a lot of Caitlin Clarks out there. If, to be honest, there's probably just one, right? So
Yeah.
what we should really be looking at is everyone but her, and what is everyone else doing, right? What is their skill level at? How is everyone else scoring? I believe there was three other players that scored double digits. How they score, right? A lot of screen and roll actions, right? Kick, pop, a lot of these actions. So I mean, I do like the I would like to say, like, I would toss it up also, people don't know what to look for essentially. And I feel like that's also lost in the noise in terms of the content and the jumping through hoops and the treadmill trainers or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I agree. You hit it right on the nose. Like, everyone points out to Caitlin Clark, and she's great, right? She's great for women's basketball. She's great for basketball in general, right? But like Kyrie Irving, there's one Caitlin Clark. Okay. There's one of her, right? Another person coming along like her in another generation, it's not going to happen. Right. So why are we looking at her trying to mimic our game after her, when we should be looking at the surrounding players in that game? If you look at Iowa, I love watching Iowa, right? Not because of Caitlin Clark. I like watching her play. I like watching the other players that are playing around Caitlin Clark. They are so simple. Okay. And they made it to a Final Four, right? You look at LSU's team. Look at LSU; they're littered with 5-star, 4-star girls, right? You look at Iowa's team. How many 5-star girls they got? How many 4-star girls they got? How many, like, you go down the line and you go down the list, but you look at their game, very simple. Okay. Rip and go, rip and go to a spin, rip and go kick, pump fake, get by, kick. So it's very simple basketball. That's what we should be looking at. But that content is not good enough for social media so people can, they can digest that content and say, hey, this person is doing it this way. But that's what college is. That's why you got so many transfers piece at the college level, whether it's boys, whether it's girls, because they take that same mantra of I'm going to dribble, 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 and do all these great dribble moves that they see, and I'm going to take it to the college level and do it at the college level. But college coaches don't want to see that. They want to see simple basketball. They want to see you make IQ simple plays because that's what wins. Okay, that's winning basketball.
And something also worth noting is going through the circuit last year and watching, girls basketball at that high level, you almost can notice that you can almost, not necessarily, but in a way, you can almost stick skill on anybody, but you can't necessarily stick IQ onto every single player, right? They're stuck in their own ways. They see the game a certain way. So speaking to what you were saying, coaches, of course, are looking for an adequate skill level, right, to take you to the next level in terms of the recruitment process. But maybe this is a whole other episode, but there is an element of awareness, IQ, when to do things that should be mentioned when going through skills, right? It's not just being able to go between the legs, it's when to go between the legs if you even need to. Or as you at your staple is simply ripping and going with the right footwork. Really just closing out the episode. Any last thoughts in terms of what players should do now? A lot of noise out there in terms of skill development. Let's say you're talking to a middle school player, right? Fairly good, right? They're aware of the game. They want to take it to the next step. What should he or she do to really find a routine and really take leaps and bounds to their game?
It's with anything. You got to be consistent. And that's the key really to anything. Consistency on an everyday basis. Not just doing it once or twice a week, thinking that's going to get through. You got to be consistent every day. And sometimes being consistent is just doing 5 minutes a day. Five, 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 right? But then you build that habit of being able to work every day. If you're not in doing something every day towards something one of your skill levels, then you're falling behind. You're falling behind other areas. You're falling behind other age groups. You're falling behind other genders, men's, girls that are in that space and are doing that on an everyday basis and working on their game. So for me, it's like take the simple stuff. I know there's not a lot of stuff out there that is showing players like what to do, and I've had discussions with Peace about maybe creating something, maybe coming out with a lot of content that is breaking down the simplicity of basketball, of making certain moves on the basketball court that you see over and over again in the girls and boys game. Because that's when I look at social media, which is rare, but I do look at it. Okay, but when I do look at it, I look at it's just complicated. This stuff that people are doing, they're complicated and there's no way that half of this stuff is getting away and like just take a I can't tell you enough. Just take a look at this weekend in the final four. I want everyone to take a look in the final four this weekend and the men's and girls game and tell me how many moves are people actually making that you see online. And if the answer is like, hey Kevin, I've seen it once or twice, that will let you know, like, being basic works. Okay, being basic has always worked. You look at the NBA level, the WNBA level. Take away the stars. The stars are going to be stars. There's only one star. There's only one or two stars per team. You take away the stars, everyone else has to 95% of the players going to have to do the same thing of being basic and mastering the basics. And if you can master the basics of basketball, okay, shooting the right way. That's one, right? Footwork, understanding what your left from your right and how to move your pivot foot, which a lot of people don't know how to do. Okay, dribbling the right way, stepping with the right foot. Okay, uh, deceiving people, understanding that if I'm gonna go right, I must fake someone like I'm going left first before I go right, not just going right. So a lot of these things are very simple, but it's hard for, and it's difficult for you. I don't know how in this day and age, if you're a young person, you kind of learn. I don't understand because there's so much mess out there that is, and I'm not saying that some of this stuff is not right. What I'm saying is, if you want to be successful, there's a certain skill set that everyone has that you have to have, right? And then you can add on all the other stuff. But if you don't add the basics, if you don't add the foundation, okay, then everything is going to come crashing down when it's time to play.
I think that's the pod.
Yes, sir.